Welcome to Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. My name's Catherine Glover. I'll just read out the role of Overview and Scrutiny, which is to provide an independent, critical friend to challenge and to work with the Council's executive and other public service providers for the benefit of the public. The committee considers submissions from a range of sources and reaches conclusions based on the weight of evidence, not on party political grounds. Okay, have we got any apologies for absence?
None received, Chair.
Minutes of the previous meeting. Has anyone got anything to say about the minutes? Pauline.
Thank you, Chairman. I gave Neil a bit of information about one of the actions that I believe is missing, which was about KPIs for school waiting lists and school applications. I think you've got some wording.
The proposed wording is another recommendation, which is, this is on page 9. So a new recommendation at the top of the page, new recommendation 5, officers be requested to consider a key performance indicator relating to the impact on demand for school places following changes in legislation from the new government. So if members are happy with that change.
Looks like it. Oh, quick show of hands on the minutes. Hello. It's unanimous. Okay, are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Are there any public questions?
No public questions and no member questions, Chair.
Lovely. Okay, item 19, the council plan. We're going to scrutinise. Actually, we're going to overview the progress in development of the new council plan. And that's sort of important because we're not scrutinising a finished document. We're reviewing a sort of high-level skeleton and helping to develop the actual plan so that when we come to scrutinise it, there won't be any surprises. So I think that tonight's going to be a bit workshoppy. We're going to be coming up with ideas to be taken forward and actually form the plan and reviewing the text of what we see here, because everyone, you know, words mean different things to different people. So we need as much input as possible. What we won't be doing is making final decisions about the wording. That we'll be making suggestions, but it will be up to the officers to actually come up with something which we'll then scrutinise later. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say was that unlike previous times when council plans have been evolved, this time we've got the community vision, which has been elaborated with in consultation with a lot of community groups. And we're starting from a position that this council has never started from before. So, you know, this is really the first time, and it so far seems to be going very well. So let's get into it. True.
Hello, everybody. I'm here because Stephen is in Croatia. He does deserve a week off, I think. I think Emily's going to present this, and that's how she wants to present it. We get through the presentation and then open discussion. Yep.
Just wondered if Sally wanted to say anything before we start. Introduction. Thank you, Emily. I think both Catherine and Prue have set the scene really well for us tonight. So as Catherine rightly said, as chair, we're here to bring the skeleton. That's a good description for overview this evening. So we've got an opportunity. We've got a number of questions. Hopefully, members have had an opportunity to look through the slides in advance, and it really is your opportunity to give us your thoughts, your ideas, both from yourselves as members, but also what you think would make the most sense for the residents you serve. So really looking forward to a thoughtful session this evening where we can capture your feedback, and then, as Catherine rightly said, we'll take that feedback away. We'll look at all of the feedback that we've gathered, both from our internal colleagues, but also it will help us shape how we engage moving forward for our residents. So thank you. Emily.
Okay, thanks, Sally. So as the first slide says, the purpose of today is really to ensure that committee members are aware of and supportive of the approach we're taking to develop the new council plan. Very importantly, that members have the opportunity to feed into the new plan and that members are aware of the next steps being taken. I just wanted to start out by setting out what the council plan is and why we have one. I'm not going to read every line there, but it's really that the council plan is our key strategic document. It sets out our mission, so our purpose as a council, and what we're aiming to deliver over the next 5 years to support the community vision. It's very much aligned to our budget. So our priorities will reflect where we can spend the money, basically. Excuse me. It's not intended to cover every single thing the council does, but the key things we want to focus on and change and do better over the next 5 years. And it also makes it very clear to staff what our priorities are and where they fit in and how they contribute. So it's part of that golden thread of how we all work. And it also it informs residents and partners what our priorities are and why those are our priorities. And this diagram just really shows where the council plan fits in with some of the other key strategic documents. So the community vision is the really high level long-term piece of work that says, what are we going to do? The council plan shows how we're going to achieve that, or what the council's contribution to that will be. And then our people strategy, which is much more internally focused, but it says who is going to deliver and how they're going to do that. And running through those all three are the Marmot Borough principles, which I believe you've had some presentations on before. So just very briefly, the approach we're taking is very much evidence-led. So we've used data from a whole range of sources and also done some early engagement with stakeholders to get a sense of what's important to people. And that will hopefully give us an understanding of the real needs of the people in our communities and start to think about how we might address those. This plan is going to be very outcome focused. So using the understanding that we've gained through all the discovery work to really sort of work out what the priorities need to be and what we need to focus on, so we can set the clear priorities and allocate resources to the things that we really want to focus on. Obviously, we can't do everything for everybody, so we really need to be quite brutal in some ways about what we will and won't do. But we've also said we want to make sure this is achievable and ambitious. And what we're going to do to ensure that we demonstrate we are achieving is have an annual delivery plan, which will have KPIs linked to it, so we can very clearly see as the years go on how we're delivering against the council plan. So as I said before, we have done quite a bit of engagement and discovery work already. And one of the products of that has been to develop a draft council mission. So that should really be stating what is the purpose of working in Borough Council. This is a draft and it's something that we'll come back to later in the meeting to get your views on, because it's not set in stone. It's just something that's come out of all the work that we've done so far. The that sort of suggested that this could be our purpose. The other thing that's come out of this is a draft ambition. So it's got 5 key themes, and it's around being a better Wokingham borough that is fairer, thriving, connected, safer and greener. So in the engagement we've been doing, we've been testing out those themes and seeing what people think, and asking them really what should sit under that. What's the activity we should be doing? So what should the council do to make Wokingham Borough thrive, be fairer, safer, greener and better connected? And that's again a question I want to come back to with members and get your views on what should sit under those themes. Just before we do that and open it up, I just want to go on to the next steps, just so you're aware what we're doing next. We've already been looking at the feedback. We've had a public survey, we've done focus groups with staff, we've spoken to directors, analysed all of that information. Obviously, we're here tonight as part of that engagement work. Following this, there'll be a new version drafted, and then there'll be further engagement with specific community groups. We'll be going to libraries, to leisure centres, so following that pattern that the community vision work followed, learning from that and what worked well in terms of engaging communities. And then later on, we'll be sort of playing that back to CLT and the executive and really coming to agreement on what those priorities are. And we'll be back here, hopefully in January, for an update to provide you with where we're at before we go out to formal consultation. So you'll get further opportunity to feed in before it goes out to the formal consultation. And ultimately, we're looking to sign off the plan in July at full council. So that's the overview. It was really then to sort of open up and Chair, go back to some of those key questions around the mission and the themes.
Yes, thank you very much, Emily. Okay, if we go back to, well, start with the what and why. Has anyone got any questions or comments about that? Ollie.
Something that occurred to me, having read it a couple of times, we've got to remember that we're spending public money, and I think there's something missing out of this about recognising that and recognising that we need to deliver quality and we need to deliver value for money, and that we need to do things in the most lean and cost-effective way that we can to get the best value for the residents' money. And I think that's sort of missing out here. I don't know where you'd fit it, but I think that needs to be in there.
I think one of the things we were looking at including is a set of guiding principles that people can work to. So, yeah, absolutely, financial sustainability of the council and spending money wisely would be one of those, alongside possibly partnership working. And it's to be worked out, but I think that's probably where we would include that.
I think just following on from that, if you're going to have principles, I think always, as well as looking at other things you can do, we should always be looking at things, as we said earlier, that you might not do. So always, rather than continue to add things on all the time, like some sedimentary rock, you always need to start trying to pick things out that we don't need to be doing and stop them, because otherwise you'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger until you explode. So I think that's the other principle, which is always looking to simplify and to not do things that people don't value.
I was just going to add to that, not do things that we've sort of done, completed.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. One, Emily mentioned that in this couple of discovery, everything is based on data insight from a number of sources, and some discovery work has been done internally as well. Is there any particular examples, perhaps user cases you can share with us? The work which was done in terms of discovery work.
Yep.
That's number one.
Yep.
Secondly, is also perhaps I'm missing it's very important what we're doing and why we are doing it. To me, why is more important yes, what is important, but why the rationale behind it. And that to me is everything we do. What are the real tangible benefits our residents will get as a result of whatever we do, right? That's the way I look at it. Will our residents their lives will be improved, will be better off as a result of whatever we're going to do, right? All the different headings, right? Maybe I can't see that very clearly, the why bit. I think it needs to be more clarified, perhaps. And if I'm missing, then please point me in the right direction. But I see that needs to be really clearly highlighted. As you can see where I'm coming from, it's the benefit side, where if we do this, how will our residents will be better off, their lives will be improved, whatever area we're going to look at. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah. So on the first question around the discovery work, we've done a lot of work around, first of all, analysing the demographic data from the census down to not just the ward level, but the really much smaller local level, and done some analysis on some borough profiles. So we've looked at different aspects of the borough, and we've done a social care profile, we've done a housing profile, a voluntary sector profile. So we've looked at all the different areas of that. We've also carried out a SWOT analysis, I suppose you'd call it, and looking at also the different things that might impact us over the next 5 years, sort of politically, economically, socially, the technological advancements, the legal things. We've looked at, obviously with the new government coming in, what are their manifesto promises and what's come out for the first few weeks of their their term. So it's bringing all of that together really and trying to understand the bigger picture. So what are the big things that are going to affect us, but also understanding internally what are the things we've committed to. So social care futures, the Marlborough Borough work, white ribbon, all of those things that we're committed to and we're going to be doing. It's how do we make the best of those and make sure that they're really embedded in what we're doing. As far as the second question goes, I think the why is absolutely crucial, and I think we need to look at it. It's going to be in the wording of what we present finally. I think that's going to come out, and we really need to understand what it is that our communities are saying that they need, and then our plan will really kind of hopefully should be addressing what our residents want and need.
Just to add, just around some of the other discovery work you've done, because you've done a lot of this, just so, but it's also looking at what other local authorities have also done. So we have been, the team have been researching other council plans, not to copy what they're doing, but equally it's also good to understand what else is going on around us. So again, just looking at that sort of bigger picture. We've also looked very specifically at Kingston, who are a Marmot borough, and again, how have they then brought those principles in alongside what they're doing in their council plan. Again, just to sort of give ideas about how you might present that. And also, as you just said, it's all about demonstrating back to our communities what we're actually doing for them and what difference we're actually making. And whilst at the moment, and I think it's important why we come and have these high level conversations with you now, the why is going to be extremely important, which is why we need to be able to demonstrate, what is it we're doing each year to reach those ambitions that we're actually setting, which is where the delivery plan and the KPIs will be aligned to ensure that when we come back into scrutiny, you can clearly see, what has been set out in that council plan and then what's actually the council done to achieve it. So that again, that's why we're looking to structure it in that way.
Can I just cut in? I know Prue was next, but I think just on the back of that, I think when you start looking at, fairer, thriving, connected, safer, greener, you've almost got that point that then says, we want to have this so that we have that and the output is this. And it's almost the story points of what you're trying to achieve. And I think it's then you've got the kind of the KPI ladders or OKIs that come down a ladder from that. So you end up in a position of I'll pick one. Opportunity to get the skills they need for good quality jobs could then ladder down into, well, what's the percentage of NEAT in the borough? What's the percentage of all of those attributes that come from it? And under the health one, you have the health metrics and hospital visit, all of those things that are within our control and influence. I think that kind of then says we're doing this so that, and then this is the output. I think that's the point I was going to make later on, but apologies for cutting across.
Just coming back on that, yes, partially that is the case, but also, typically the way I see it is, it's like what problem are we trying to resolve here, right? So problem, identify what the problem is. That could come from the communities or whatever. What solution we are providing to that, and how our residents are benefiting from that, and we can demonstrate that in a tangible way. So that sort of clarity, I feel, needs to be there in whichever document we put together. I know this is a high-level draft. That's why probably we don't see it here at the moment. But the end result, my expectation would be that it will be clearly identified as a result of our consultation with all the different stakeholders. This is the problem we come up with. This is a solution we're going to fix. How we're going to fix it. And these are actually the benefits. Our benefit residents will be better off as a result of this. That's one part of that. But also with previous plans, and again, this has been mentioned, I've mentioned it a couple of times, making sure that we have the tracking mechanism as well, monitoring, that we are delivering what we said we will deliver. And I do feel that as a council, we are not good at monitoring, looking back in time. So this is 25-30. In 5 years down the line, can we actually say that, look, this is what we set off in 2024, and this is what we have delivered, and how far we've been successful in this? That history, that monitoring, I haven't seen that level of monitoring, right? And that's what I would expect moving on. So we need to be more systematic about this, and hopefully that in there as well.
They did say that they were going to have an annual delivery plan with KPIs. Doesn't that answer that question?
I think sometimes the plan is, this is what we're going to do, but this is monitoring and tracking this is what we have actually delivered, which may not be what we planned in the first place. We have objectives, but you may not actually achieve 100% of the objectives, and quite often we don't, right? But just saying that this is obviously probably a yearly plan will maybe cover some of that, but I think that really needs to be regularly monitored and obviously evidence provided to the committee as well.
Thank you. I was just going to pick up on Pauline's point, but I think I'll cover a bit more if that's all right with you, Chair. Why do we have a council plan apart from the fact that we're, I think, statutorily obliged to have one? We've done all this community vision work, and that has told us what our residents want the borough to be like. And therefore, why we're doing this is to try and make the borough like what they want it. But we're not, the community vision is a much bigger piece of work, which has involved an awful lot of people, and we are not delivering all of that activity. So this is our component of that bigger picture. And I think that needs to be made clear in the thing. So previously we've had a council plan, it's been all about the council. This is actually being influenced from outside. And I noticed several times you talk about what problem we're going to solve, Shahid. Some of it is about that, but some of it is not about problem solving. It's actually about thinking of things you haven't thought of before and doing them to make the community better. So it's a bit wider than that. And I think we need to make it clear in the wording that this plan is not covering everything that the council does. If we lose the focus on the things we're actually trying to change with it, it won't be very effective. And if we ram it too full, I mean, what's that saying about if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So you have to keep it fairly focused and quite tight, I think. Pauline's point about value for money and things, I think that is going to come out in the principles, because on the slide underneath where it said the what, the who, and the whatever, and the how, was the little words MTFP, which is the bit that hangs off it. So this is, for me, part of the rationale for doing this is how do we get our very scarce resources focused on what we need to change to the extent that we can focus them, because there's an awful lot of stuff that we have no discretion over, and we'll be stuck with it. So we do need to have that value for money underpinning principle. We need to have partnership, which I think Louise mentioned. And the marmot influence is extremely important, because that's about creating a climate in which you can focus your effort on the things that make a difference to people and should have a should improve positive outcomes for people all the way through their lives. And I personally would like that expressed in a way which includes early intervention and prevention, because I think prevention is the key to husbanding our resources in an effective way. I was very interested in Pauline saying, what about the things we can stop doing? If Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee would like to tell us some of the things we could stop doing, we'd be delighted to hear. I mean, we have some things in mind and some things we can start doing as well, but which will help. But I'm sure I'm saying this in this isn't a political committee, but the consequences of stopping things are often that in other forums you will get party political kickback or whatever, and it doesn't always go well. So it'd be good to have an overview and scrutiny view on what should happen, because then it's something where we've come together as a council and decided. So that would be really good. The last point I wanted to make was about the reviews. I'm slightly surprised. I know we haven't been very good in the past at necessarily following things up, but I thought that we have been bringing things back for review. We have got an annual cycle of stuff that we examine. You should see all the KPIs, and if there are KPIs we need to add to monitor the progress on the plan, that can be organised. And it will be reported to you as often as you have KPIs, and that should help us stay on track. So it is important that we don't stick these things on the shelf, but I honestly don't believe that we do. The number of action plans and progress reports and implementation things that I see every week is astonishing. So it won't work unless we do that, because it won't make the difference that we need to make. So those are the things I wanted to say so far. I might come back, but I think we welcome your input on how we focus and what we can put in here. Caroline.
Thank you. I'm going to go slightly different. You've mentioned other councils and some of the implications of some things we like to do, like the climate emergency and transport. Are you talking to other councils to help us implement the actions, particularly I think of the climate emergency?
We've got different network groups across I think a number of different professions where we try to come together to look at how we're approaching things. Just as another example of some of the bench work that we've been doing, met with Bracknell Forest, for example, and we've just talked through with them very high level on their approach to bringing in a new council plan and then different elements within that. But I know we had an update from our climate change colleagues quite recently, and I know that they're also out benchmarking themselves against what else is going on in the rest of other local authorities and what they're doing. Because again, it is that thing of we can come up with ideas, as you say, but it is also looking at what else can we learn from different places. I don't know, Emily, if there's anything else you can add around that?
Only that through our connections with the work we're doing around the Marmot Borough. So the I forget the name of the institute who's doing the work with us, but Sally could probably tell me.
Sally's got her hand up.
Yes, so we're doing a lot of work around the health inequalities piece with the Health Institute. So yeah, we're learning from them at the moment.
So they've been putting me in touch with other councils that they're currently working with or are sort of further along the process with, and looking at how they've developed their council strategy as well.
Thank you. But I'm most interested in working with them, not learning from them as well, because obviously our borders of the climate emergency don't stop at Reading. So it's trying to, we've got this ambition, but we do need the boroughs around us to work with us.
I think that's a really good point when we're looking at delivery and sort of having this shared ambitions, and we're not working against our neighbours. Yeah, that's a good point.
Pauline's next.
Thank you. Just coming back to Prue's point on value for money and about not doing things. Often value for money is not about whether you do something or not, but how you do it. So I think we need to be really careful about how we do things to get the best value for the money that we are spending, and as little as possible, obviously. As far as stopping doing stuff is concerned, I can think of strategies that we saw last year that I won't go into now, which had 4 pages of action plan, action plan after action plan, loads and loads and loads and loads of actions. To come back to Shahid's point, there was no clarity about what those actions were going to deliver in terms of what dials they were going to move, and whether the things that they were working on were actually a problem, and whether they were a priority. So I'm not talking about stopping filling holes in the road or whatever it is. What I'm talking about is making sure that there is an absolute laser focused link between what we're doing and the problem, and we do the things that have the most impact on the problem or the opportunity, rather than just having a random set of 60 actions which are incoherent and don't really link to any delivery in terms of a target. So it's really important to understand where the problem is, where the biggest problem is, what the most significant thing that we can act on is, and what the most significant action we can do. And by doing that, you can actually hone down the actions and reduce the size of the amount of things that are being done and deliver more with less.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make a comment about why and who we're doing this for, and how we're going to keep our residents and our stakeholders involved and communicated with in a way that they understand. One of the problems that I think we have as a council is that we don't tell people what we're doing behind closed doors, and we need to improve that. And so at various stages along the road that we put out comms to all that we need to go out to, of what we're doing with and for them rather than to them. And so the tone needs to show what we're offering, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're trying to improve lives for all of us in the borough. And if we could bear that in mind as we go through, and it might be a timely thing to release now, a taster of what's going on and how we're going to work through it, and some sort of idea of a timetable, and not a strict one, but an idea, because things never quite go to plan, but so that the residents know what we're actually doing for them. And they will help us along and agree with what we're doing if we keep them informed.
Shahid.
Just 2 comments, just add-ons, to be honest. One, to what Pauline said and what the point which Caroline made earlier on. I think it's, again, it's the clarity point. I think the way I look at it, again, is that every step we do, we've got priorities at a high level, but every action we take, there has to be why, the benefits, and that we should be able to confidently say, we have taken 50 steps, just giving an example, actions we've taken in this year, which are aligned with our priorities, which you have defined, but each action we've taken will deliver X, Y, Z benefit for the residents. That level of clarity I'm thinking about. So everything we do, we're here because that's what we're elected by the residents. We're here to improve as a result of what we do as a council, it should improve their lives one way or the other, right? And if it's not, I would question what is the point of that action we're taking, right? So that level of clarity, I think we need, right? Just second point regarding what Caroline mentioned, working with the neighbouring boroughs. I mean, this is just give you an example again, where a neighbouring borough might take an action, but actually we could see the downside results of that. You probably, some of you know, in my former ward, Beaumish and Whitegate, next to Whitegate, going to Reading, they've actually started a new bus lane now. So obviously there's a reason for that. They were done, and one of the benefits I've heard is people are cursing what they've done and nobody likes what they've done it. So as a result of that, it's actually piling up traffic all the way A4, and I live on Reading Road, all the way to BP petrol station now, as it is. So it was 2 lanes before, now it's become 1 lane, and the problem was there before, and now it's becoming double the problem. And now, even though the bus lane is in Reading, but actually the effect we see, also pollution, you can just imagine if the traffic is stuck there for 1 hour, the pollution which comes of it, I don't think is very environmentally friendly, right? So our residents in Whitegate, they are seeing the negative, the pollution increases there because of the action taken by a neighbouring borough. So I'm not sure, I know this is just an example, but I'm not sure whether when the residents, Reading took that action, did they consult the working borough, what impact they might have had.
To give you an example, we did know about the scheme, but the money for it was given to Reading, and there are things that we could do to improve the situation in Wokingham. We said to the government, this scheme is partially in Wokingham, and they gave the money to Reading, and Reading refused to give any to us. We are stuck. It's not ideal. We're looking at it very hard, but your example is a good one, I think, of how something done in one borough just makes a mess for other people. It's not very satisfactory at all.
Sorry, just to come back, so this is exactly the point, right? The people don't see the money, the detail, right? People don't want to know who took the money, who didn't took the money. They only come out, so the comments we hear is our life is made difficult as a result of the action taken by. So this is where obviously the work needs to happen behind the scenes. But I'm saying the point I'm making is our residents are suffering as a result of that.
They are. And it's extremely unfortunate, and we would be trying our very best in our borough not to do that to residents in another borough. But you can't always persuade other councils of your viewpoint.
Sorry, the principles of cross-working across council borders. Sorry, I can't get my words out. Only had a comment.
Just on that specific point, we had the same problem with Shinfield Road traffic lights, and actually we took that to the Transport Ombudsman. So there is a duty between local authorities to collaborate. I don't know if you've been to the Transport Ombudsman, but if we haven't, we should try and see if they will sort it out. Because actually, if somebody's saying we're doing this and stuff you, there is actually a way forward.
So I moving on from that, but I think actually the Cemetery Junction one and joint working is a really good idea, because some of the original kind of genesis of that money came from the local enterprise partnership, which was to sort out Cemetery Junction, which is a major pinch point in the whole area, the work in Thames Valley Park to then put the bus bridge across to directly link Thames Valley Park to Reading Station. Which I think we then, it's a complicated thing, because we then as a council said no, but we got the bridge at Barkham from the same money through recycled money. So I think there is a general point I'm trying to make about cross-border working. I had a couple of points just when I looked through this in detail. I also have been reading through the draft working vision document. And I think, like many of us in the room, we probably sat through how many council plans in varying guises and times. And I don't think I've seen one that's been at this stage that's been led quite so much by the input from residents, from businesses, from community groups. Normally you start from not being a political comment, but normally you start from a manifesto of a council political party that says this is what we're going to do and this is how you're going to shape it. And I think to actually approach this in the position of having the feedback directly from residents about what bothers them, what matters to them, how that's shaped, what concerns them, I think gives it a real opportunity to take this to the next level. I think words matter as well. And I think some of this we'll just need to be careful of over the coming months on interpretation of what a word means, and make sure that actually when we say thrive, that we all know in the broad sense what thrive means to everyone. So it doesn't come as a surprise. Mine, I think I've said in other places that when you're talking about thriving, there's also behind that is aspiration and ambition and helping people achieve, which I think then leads to better outcomes, earlier intervention, and all of the other rest of it. So I think there's work to do around the tweaks of it. I think when you're looking at the Marmot principles, which are great as guiding principles, that is the golden thread of whatever we do and sits and underpins everything. I think the 5 pillars of those words and those topics are, from my view, broadly right. I'm sure they'll get refined and refreshed and changed as it goes through the process in the next 6 months. I think the mission statement is fine. There's a difference in approaching this from a blank sheet of paper. I mean, we've had a local plan which governed how the council's run for the last sort of 5 years, and that dealt with things like regeneration of Wokingham town centre. And that was the guiding kind of the core part of one of the last pieces of work. So I think things change, things move on. There's lots of patchy connections between the current local plan and the next local plan, because it should be an evolutionary process, not a revolutionary process. And I'm glad to see that in there. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how this kind of builds all the way through with the next steps. And I used golden thread for the 3rd time in one speech. But it is how this all links together, how we then align that, how we then go back to the residents who've already given us the feedback through the vision. I think Beth made the point about feedback and consultation and engagement, and there'll be another part of this to let people have their say about, okay, so this is what you said in the vision, here's the plan for the council, does it match what your vision is, and have we got things wrong? I think Pauline's point on the kind of the value for money, the doing things with the resources that we got, aligning it to that medium-term financial plan, looking at council finances as a whole for every council in the country. How do you get things done effectively, efficiently, and offering value for money? I think sometimes we're going to look at some stuff that actually people haven't identified, but we know there's a priority that if we can fix this, then it unlocks some of the other things. It's stupidity of making it easier for our customers, our residents as customers, to engage with the council and the things that they need. I think the daft things like when you call up the council and have to go through 28 levels of a phone system, using technology in a different way that might not actually have come up in the plan from a resident to go, hey, use technology better to get better outcomes. And that might mean smarter investment and more investor save schemes that by doing something unlock that future direction. So I think there's an aspiration in here. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of the next evolution of this as it comes back, and for when it comes back to this committee for kind of more review, more input and things. I think it's really important that we look at the this is overview as opposed to scrutiny. This is one of the major things that all councils do, that most councils, I think in the 20 or so that I've done peer reviews with over the time, most councils will look at the scrutiny rather than the overview, and this is that real chance for us to get involved right at the ground level in shaping that. So actually when it comes back to us next year, I think someone said earlier, it shouldn't come as a massive surprise as to the content, because it has been co-produced in many ways by residents, businesses, community groups, councillors, officers, the last local plan, the next local plan, our current financial positions, changes that will emerge over the next, I would say, 6-12 months as the new government settles in and sorts out its priorities, pressures with the budget, which I'm sure will change in, there's so many unknowns that we have that time to do it. So I think that was a long rambling answer, a long rambling input. But from my perspective, it's great to see this being evidence-led by the community vision and the feedback from residents and groups. From my position, I think the mission statement is broadly right. I think it will change and evolve as it goes through planning and next steps. And I think those kind of 5 pillars are broadly right. And again, would expect that to kind of refresh and change and grow as it goes through the next stages of development. But I do agree about that bus lane in Cemetery Junction. I sat there for an hour and a half the other day. Okay. That's it. Nothing else.
Anybody got any more?
Just one more.
Go on.
Sorry. I think, again, this is just a broad point. When it's a community vision, making sure that it is a community vision and it is led by the community, and these are the wishes and the desires of what the community wants. Because, historically, there's been occasions where we go out and find what the community wants, but we ignore what they say, and we have different objectives. So I think that marketing make a very important point. It should not be manifesto led. It should be what actually the understanding what the residents want and what will benefit the residents. And we should need to come across as a council who listens to their residents, their concerns, and whatever we are doing because they said this is what we will do, this is what we have done, and this is the benefits they've got. So in other words, listening council.
Louise?
Just to reassure you on the journey that the vision has been, so the community's vision, there is a completely separate steering group that runs that the work that has gone into the vision, and the council is one of those partners, and then there is multiple partners that have been then part of engaging with all the different community groups all the way through the borough. And just for awareness, because I appreciate it has been into this meeting, but it was previous before the obviously last elections. Jackie Whitney and Sally Watkins have been here just sort of explaining, and the leader, to be fair, actually the journey that vision's been on and the part that we're playing, and to the point that when the vision is also introduced and agreed, partners are coming, I believe, as well to just demonstrate that it's not just the council that have actually pulled that vision together, because as you say, it's so very important that the residents' voice is heard. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head about how many people, and I know Sally's now got her hand up because she knows it in probably a bit more detail than me, but I know there's been a huge amount of interaction on numbers with regard to the numbers of people, even to the point that different demographics, when they looked at who had engaged, they went back out to make sure that there was then demographics right across the borough that had been engaged with. So, but I know I can see Sally's got her hand up. So,
Sally.
Thank you, Chair. I'd love the confidence that I know the figures off the top of my head, which I don't, but we can share it with committee members afterwards. But what I can say on the back of what Louise has just said is that absolutely right. The steering group is a group of a number of different people from across the borough, whether that be faith groups, community groups, voluntary groups, businesses, schools, and we are just one part of it. And our hope and our ambition for that steering group post the creation of the community vision is that steering group will continue. And then just to answer Shahid's point with a little bit more clarity from my point of view, to make sure that we had the voice of the community, the first thing we did was make sure it wasn't just the council that was seeking those community views. Actually, we used the networks of the people in that steering group to make sure that we had a wider representation from across the piece, because we recognise that actually often the community groups are better placed than we are to bring some of that feedback into the council to help us shape both what we do, but also to inform the community vision. And that includes seldom heard voices to make sure that we absolutely have the breadth and depth of what our residents, our businesses, our partners are wanting to see from Woking Borough, not just now, not just in 5 years for the duration of the council plan, but into 10 years into the future. So it is absolutely aspirational. But the council plan document is being created as the council's part of delivery against that community vision.
I have the figures.
Thanks, Prue.
So the community vision is coming to the executive at the end of September. So there's 18 organisational partners through the steering group that Sally described. And then the networks that lie behind them. There's 30 charities with their members and their networks involved. 34 targeted events were held across the borough. 51 community and business groups, 6 library drop-in sessions, 500 online survey responses and engagement with all 17 town and parish council clerks, and then various other internal things, focus groups, strategic leadership boards, schools, and the youth council. And the youth council designed the logo, and CLASP oversaw the creation of an easy read version. So quite a lot.
Page 4 at 5. If anyone wants to see it.
Sorry, Chair.
Shahid?
I'm just thinking that there's a lot of work has gone into that, but as a councillor, I didn't know any of this. Is that shared with everyone?
Yes, there was a session held at the library for the Lib Dem group and a session held at the library for the Conservative group.
In terms of the
with,
involvement with the communities,
Yeah.
I just would like to be useful actually to know which communities, mentioned Sally, faith groups or the community who are involved in this. Just as a list, it'll be useful. Just because making sure that obviously we have our own network as well. Just making sure that everybody, who should be involved, it is involved.
Louise?
I can see Sally's got her hand up, but
Oh.
I was just going to say I can take as an action because I know Jackie Whitney has all of that information, so we can write back to the committee with that information so that everybody can then see who we've engaged with.
It may be that some of it's too long ago because some of it was last summer, and I think the sessions for members were before some of this committee were elected, possibly, because if they were elected this year. But there was engagement, and we engaged a company whose name escapes me.
New Local.
New Local, that's right. New had local in the title, to actually run that for us. And I'm sure it has been reported back at previous overview and scrutiny meetings.
Okay, I've got a small comment. I mean, it sounds nitpicky, but the more I look at them, the more I think it actually is more important than it sounds. On your 5 things, the different coloured things, 3 of them have on the end, safer, greener and fairer. If you have words like that, you've got to be able to measure whether you've actually improved. Is that the intention? Whereas thriving and connected are just thriving and connected. So I think you need some parallelism in there, really.
Yeah, I would really like it if they were all sounded the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I guess that's something we need to work through in terms of the final iteration of what those look like, so that they all align with one another. But yeah, if we're going for greener, we want a baseline of where we're at now, so we can see where we are in the future.
I don't think it would be to the detriment to just have safe, green and fair, to be honest. And that would go with thriving and connected. But if you want to have to measure them, they perhaps all need that. Fine. Any more? Caroline?
Just a quick one. Prue, you mentioned that it's been to the town clerks. Is it at any time going to go to the borough liaison group? Borough parish liaison group, sorry.
Marie-Louise. Yeah. Okay.
I think Stephen went to the borough parish liaison group to present it, and Sally knows the answer.
Yeah, I myself and Stephen have taken it to the Borough Parish Liaison Forum, as Neil will know, as he administers it. I think we talked about the vision for the last 4 sessions. So that's the entirety of certainly of my attendance over the last year. We also brought the chair of the steering group for the development of the community vision, which is Nick Fellows, who's the chief executive of Boykenham Volunteers. We also brought Deb Morrison from CLASP along to the last Borough Parish Liaison Forum, really to go into the detail of where we've got to on our development journey. But just to reiterate, we've been talking about the community vision at the Borough Parish Liaison Forum. I also took the postcards to get the Borough Parish Liaison representatives to fill those in as well. So we have done as much engagement as we possibly can. And as Prue mentioned as well, we had dedicated sessions with town and parish clerks facilitated by new locals. So I really hope that is kind of the start of better engagement with town and parish councils as well. So it was all part of our desire to have improved partnership working.
Louise?
And it was just to add that all the stuff that's been done on the vision, we're learning, and we were going to then do something similar with the council plan. So whilst that's still ours now, what we're delivering in that part, we will also make sure that they are partners that we also engage with on the council plan.
Marie-Louise?
Yes, sorry, we moved towards and then past what I was going to say. I mean, to go out as far as it's possible to go, I think there is an issue to think about in terms of, are we, as a council, are we actually a vision-driven organisation? Yeah. I realise this is rather too late to say this, but I think it's worth building that into thinking about how this is presented as well, because we work most vision generation processes that I've been involved in have been around an organisation finding its niche, finding its identity, as it were. And the thing that is both magic and horrible about councils is that they tend to be all things to all people, and they also work in an environment where they are constantly forced to be reactive to a whole series of environmental factors and governance factors, i.e., the loss of power that we have seen in local government over the last 40 years. Yeah. And my concern with this is that I don't see any sense of the environment in which we're actually operating. Yeah. And the problem generally with vision generation as it is that it tends, as it goes through the process, to become sort of more generic and vaguer. And I mean, there is nothing literally that we do or would want to do that could not be fitted into one of these 5. Yeah. And that is the problem of this sort of refinement process, and also the issue of like the tangibility of it. What are we actually hoping to do with this? I mean, I won't say entertain myself, because it was the least entertaining thing you could possibly do. But I did look at the vision and strategy of Kensington and Chelsea Council from 2010 to 2015. Yeah. And it was like a salutary lesson in you would read it and there wouldn't be a sit there, it was diversity, it was equality, it was diversity of housing, renewing legacy, fostering vitality. I mean, who would not agree with that? And yet we know what they were doing, yeah, and the choices that were made, not solely by them, but partially by them. So I would just put in a note of concern about how this is actually going to drive improvement rather than mask both our powerlessness and sometimes the mistakes we make.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. That echoes some of what I was thinking.
Max, I absolutely agree with you. And I think what will make the difference is what we put under those headings, and they need to be specific things that are clearly defined and deliverable, and you can track them, and not a general mishmash of we're going to, I don't know, make life better for children by sending them all to a decent school or something. It actually has to be something really tangible, because that is where we come unstuck. And I think I kind of alluded to it, not quite as eloquently as you did when I said that if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So it is that we really need the sharp focus and not too many things, not too many projects in there, but they do need, it needs to be tightly defined.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think it links into a little bit those, and I was wondering. I know there's been a bit of discussion about this, but whether there's my sort of thoughts are: is there something in this plan which will define it as Wokingham's necessarily? Because I think there's a bit of I think particularly I think you touched on it a bit, Prue, that the very top level stuff I think has sometimes the danger of possibly being a bit generic and sort of actually, could this be a plan for any local authority across the country? And I know possibly digging down, there might be some more specifics, but I'm guessing at what level do we want it to be Wokingham Borough's plan, and at what level it's just could be on any council website somewhere?
Louise?
I'm going to have an attempt at just going back on that, but I think the main thing, and you're absolutely, it's the identity piece, because you say you can write a lot of words and the words could just be lifted and shifted. And I come back to some of that discussion we had earlier around the deliverables of actually stating year by year what it is we're delivering, and being able to go back and show then what difference has happened in Wokingham. So back to our residents and what it is that they're wanting, obviously, for their borough, and again through our measures and KPIs. And I've sort of, I think those are the main things that we will be looking at. I don't know, Emily, again, if there's anything else you want to add, because I appreciate you've had a lot of discussions with people as well.
I mean, I know it's always a risk with these council plans, and I've looked at a lot of them over the last year or two, that they can be just talking about anywhere and saying the same kind of things. And what I'm really keen to do is that anyone who picks this up when it's written will say, yes, that's telling me about Wokingham and what the specific issues and opportunities are in Wokingham and how we're working to address them. And that comes from conversations like this and all the conversations we're having out in the communities. We'll get that.
Dave?
I have no doubt that this committee and the council can come up with an awful lot of laudable ambitions and targets for this, and I'm sure between us we'll all get there and do that. I think the concern will be putting in place those KPIs, making sure they're as smart as possible, and we can understand where we've done well and where we haven't. And it's not a case of setting KPIs that are going to effectively give us a pat on the back rather than absolutely scrutinising what we're doing. There may be occasions where we have better outcomes than we expect. There may also be occasions where the plan doesn't deliver and in fact fails. And I think we need to not be afraid to recognise that and learn from it. And sometimes taking the hard knocks is necessary to build a better community for everyone.
Marie-Louise?
Yes, sorry, just going on from Andrew's point, I think part of the thing of finding a distinct, to link with having a distinct local vision is also the process of making a vision, of creating a vision or generating one, sharing one, is that it does involve choices. And I think it's interesting to look at the example of Cambridge, right, where they went through a similar process, where they ended up with one, if you like, which was, and I wrote it down, one Cambridge Fair for all. And they decided to take the issue of, the disparity within Cambridge, within the city as their starting point, and as the point by which they would be judged. That process, I know, annoyed some of my former colleagues, in the university, who sort of felt that their interests and whatever were being sidelined. So I'm just saying that sort of like we should embrace the idea that we will annoy people or make, it doesn't have to be everything to everybody. Yeah, there is a point of choice where we say, Wokingham, a town where your children can afford to live, for example. Yeah, we could have a vision that expressed the process of having made a choice. Yeah.
Alison.
Right, I've been looking back at our previous local plan, which was 2020 to 24, and refreshed in 22. And you know, we had 7 strategic priorities there, and each one ended with this is what success will look like, with sort of 5 to 6 points. And what I'd like to know is, have we been back and marked that plan? You know, where it says what success looks like. Did we reach that in 24? Because pretty much most of them, I would say we didn't, because they were ambitious. And it would just be good, I think, to have, you know, assessed that plan and said, right, okay, this is how much of it we did achieve. Because I mean, most of the points I expect will probably be in the next one. You know, things like local residents are supported and protected during any new development in the neighbourhood, and essential infrastructure is delivered up front. Well, I think we can pretty much, all of us, not party political here, say we didn't achieve that in 4 years, and it's something we would definitely want to put for our residents. So how did we go back and mark our previous plan to see if we did achieve the success that we wanted?
Sally.
Thank you. Really good question. So I'm going to try and refresh my memory going back to 2020, because I wasn't involved in the role I'm in now. I guess what I would say straight away, when you think about that period, that was COVID. So the 2020 was the start of the pandemic. So that will, without a doubt, have affected some of the ability to deliver in that period. What I can say with absolute surety, and I'm sure Louise would say the same if I was to hand back, is that we're in the process of being able to publish the delivery plan. What we also, which is going to come very soon, so we'll be able to publish against the transitional council plan. So you've got everything that committee members are saying this evening. We hear you. I think you've raised it previously. So work has been underway with every director, with their leadership teams, to make sure we've got real clarity about how have we delivered against it. We've also been producing annual reports which look back at what our priorities are for the council plan and our progress against it. I think the piece that we haven't done before that we've picked up now is making sure that we publish that information. So I think it's a really valid point to raise, and we've taken that feedback on board, and we are addressing that right now. And what that allows us to do is really get in shape for the next iteration of the council plan. And I absolutely agree. Apologies, I can't remember who said it, but somebody referenced a smart delivery plan, and that's absolutely where I'm really focused, to make sure that we've got kind of smart, measurable, because from our point of view, we talk about you manage what you measure, and to really get the best out of that, what we don't want is 2 different sets of KPIs, etc. What we need to do is look at what the council's KPIs are currently, what we think is going to come out of the council plan, and then actually we need to revisit all of our corporate KPIs to make sure that we are, to use Pauline's phrase, kind of laser focused on the things that are important to us, that our residents have said important, that our members have said are important, that officers are saying, and then we've got that real clarity on you said, we did, and where things sometimes go off track. As I've said, we're really clear about that and transparent, and can articulate why.
Just a very short thing, because yes, thank you, Catherine. Sorry. The problem for me with what you read out there is that how on earth do you measure whether you've done that infrastructure or not? So I would want us to be much more clear in what we're trying to achieve. It's no good saying we'll make everybody feel better in their neighbourhoods. You know, you've actually got to say what it is you're going to do. Well, yes, but it's a very woolly what, and sorry, that sounded very strange.
That sounds very odd.
but I think you have to be able to measure it, and trying to measure that will be extremely difficult.
Well, the bit that said you'll have infrastructure ready before the houses is measurable. We haven't done it in all cases, but it's definitely measurable.
I think we what Sally said, we've learned the lesson of trying to to do it properly and actually give us something that we can measure. Because otherwise, how do you judge whether you're a success or not? You can't.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be more specific. I mean, last time we had what success will look like, and it simply said improved air quality. It's like, well, it might be like 0.5% better, or I think we might be talking about the places that we know struggle. You know, we all know the crossroads and places that have been identified. So, absolutely, we need to be a lot more defined what we're trying to achieve, and then we will achieve.
Okay, so
Again, I think picking up Alison's point, that this is a point I made very earlier on about monitoring and whether we've been successful. Yes, Sally's point, yes, we'll do that next time. But again, maybe sitting here in the council for a number of years, you see a lot of these plans, and again, this is not a particular one, but across the board, we see is we always make plans, but we are not, in my observation, good at actually reviewing what's happened. And if there's, and what are the lessons learned? What are the, what is the assurance that we won't actually do the same thing which we've done before? So if 2 or 3 years ago it wasn't clear, how will you make sure that we don't repeat that same scenario this time? It is clear. It is not the word which you use, woolly, or whatever. The word is just vague, right? So it's not clarity, is not there. I think we all, I think the point has been made that it needs, we don't want to sit back and say another 4 years time and use the same thing. Oh, it's not very clear. We put it there, but it wasn't measurable. Therefore, we couldn't measure it, right? That means we haven't really learned anything at all. So, and this is the point I think we need to make, that and I've seen the same pattern again. We'll do it next time. This is the better, but actually, have we learned from the past? And sometimes observation is we haven't. Sorry, I didn't know.
Louise.
I just wanted to reiterate something that Sally had said. So the transitional plan that is live now for this year, we haven't put on the forward plan yet, but we will be putting on the forward plan the delivery plan, because what we're doing is testing that model on this current plan, so that absolutely we can learn, and that would be you scrutinising, obviously, what we've actually delivered, but that will be coming forward in the forward plan, so that I think it's answering the point about the fact of demonstrating what we've delivered against that plan, and then learning from it as we develop the new plan and the new delivery plan for the upcoming council plan. Is that fair? Is that a good representation? Yeah. So I think it's just to sort of say we will bring that back in, and we will speak to Neil and the chair to make sure that that's on the forward plan, so that you can see what we're doing.
Excellent. Thank you. Have we finished? Everybody happy? Louise? Right. Quick look at the so we've got the forward programme. Anybody got any comments to make on? I know you have.
It's just, I think we're expecting a revised. Some of the work programme needs to be revised, especially on the playing pitch strategy, after CCOS couldn't consider it last week. So I think there'll be some movement around that, so it doesn't come to 28th of September.
It won't be a bit later.
So I think the ask is, can we get an updated, can we get the work programme updated for the executive, and then there'll be some resulting knock-on changes into Scrutiny's working programme for the next couple of months as well, especially CCOS.
Any more? And then we have the individual executive member forward plan. Oh, Pauline.
Do we have any idea when we're going to see the report for that?
I can check and let you know.
Okay. And we've got draft work programs. Are we going to let's have a look at those? I understood we weren't going to consider the proposed changes to the structure. Weren't we going to leave that until later on?
This is still out of date for CCOS. In fact, it's very out of date. It's a previous version. So Grays Farm didn't come to the 2nd of September. The playing pitch one we couldn't determine. Couldn't offer comments on, so that's been moved. Grays Farm is later on. That didn't even come onto the agenda for the 2nd of September. And I think there's other changes down the plan. The task and the Litzby task and finish group, same thing, didn't make it on. I think we've moved a lot of the meetings around. So I think basically the comment is that the work programme, especially for CCOS, needs updating, and there was an action that came out of last week's meeting to fix it and then recirculate it round to certainly that committee, but I guess then it will inform the change into the management committee as well.
So this agenda went out before your meeting last week. That's why it's out of date. So we will update it and make sure it's accurate.
Pauline.
Thank you. I know the budget is in here, but usually we get that in October. It seems to have gone to the 12th of November. It's a bit late because it usually takes 3 or 4 meetings.
So I'm just going to say, to Neil's point that he's probably had to make, is that was also discussed at the end of last meeting, and there's a revised work programme due to come through that's got the new budget dates in it. And as Neil said, this was produced beforehand, but yeah, it's in there.
Because the other thing we were promised, and I've talked to Graham about it since, is an update on the reserves. So all the different earmarked and non-earmarked reserves and what they're for and what the balances are of those. We should get that every year. That's part of the budget stuff. It's a precursor. That needs to come now-ish.
So the proposed date is the 7th of October for Graham to come to Community and Corporate with his overview. So we could discuss what goes in that, and that could include what you just said.
Thank you, that'd be great. I did talk to him about it. He did say it was coming, but I just want to make sure we get it.
Pauline.
Sorry. One other question. We discussed probably about, I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 8 months ago, something like that, the new governance for the housing authorities, for the housing companies. And although I didn't agree with it, the proposal was put forward as meant to have a Conservative rep on the housing board, and I haven't heard any more about it. So I just wondered, has that meeting happened? And we weren't asked to nominate anybody during the process of nominations. I don't know what's happened to that, but I'm just a bit worried that the housing companies are treading water.
We'll get you an update on that as well.
Alison.
Chairman, do you think it would be helpful if the executive forward programme, when presented to this committee, could have a column that shows whether that strategy, plan has been through ONS or is planned to, with the date, so that we can look at this straight away to see, oh, that's going to corporate community of estate, that's going to children's services, where there's any gaps.
I can't see why it shouldn't. It would be useful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, just thinking that as well. It's that easy RAG status type approach of has it been, so you can not just the date, but just make it easier to work out and see graphically which ones are, which ones aren't, which ones have, which ones are yet to be, I guess. It's reached that point in evening. I should say it's reached that point in evening, but yeah, I'd agree. I think that's a really good way.
I think six, we've got all the chairman of the other committees here. So if something hasn't been through, then this committee can either decide to look at it itself or request that it goes to one of the subcommittees.
Yes. Okay. Overview Scrutiny Management Committee Action Tracker. No, doesn't sound as if anybody's got anything to say. So I think the meeting comes to a close. You weren't going to say anything, were you? Were you going to say something? No. Good. Right. Lovely. Thanks ever so much for coming. We finished before 8:30.